You don't have to be nice to everyone. Have you ever said yes to an invitation, a task, or a request, even though deep down you really didn't want to? You smiled and said, sure. But right after that came frustration, exhaustion, and a subtle sense of betraying yourself. We live in a society that praises kindness, patience, and a willingness to help. That's not wrong. But if you always say yes to others, you'll eventually have to start saying no to yourself. Heavy exclamation mark symbol. Why is saying no so hard? Because we're afraid of disappointing others. Because we want to keep the peace. Because we think it's just a little extra effort, I'll manage. But that little extra, over time, turns you into someone who feels lost. Someone who loses their self-respect and slowly drains their inner energy. In this video, you'll discover the deep psychological reasons why we struggle to say no, the hidden cost of not setting clear personal boundaries, and most importantly, how to say no in a way that earns respect and even increases the love people have for you. White right pointing back hand index. You don't need to please everyone. You just need to know how to protect your space at the right time. Part 1. Why is it so hard for us to say no? There's an ironic truth in life. We often choose to please others instead of being honest with ourselves. Psychologically, there are 3 main reasons why we hesitate to say no. 1. Fear of hurting others. From a young age, we were taught things like, you should always help others. Saying no is selfish. Being polite means saying yes, even when you don't want to. A small example. A friend invites you to lunch. You're exhausted, but you still say yes. You don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to seem rude. But in doing so, you sacrifice your need for rest just to hold onto a forced smile. 2. Fear of being judged as difficult. Many people worry that if they say no, others will think, she's arrogant. He's so unfriendly. They always say no. So cold and distant. Out of fear of judgment, they slowly become someone who always says yes. Who always tolerates, who always steps back. They become the version others find easy to be around, but a version they themselves no longer recognize. 3. Lack of clear personal boundaries. A lot of people have never taken time to ask themselves, where do my boundaries lie? How much time, energy, and care can I really give? They don't say no because they don't know what's truly worth protecting. Pensive face. The result? You're constantly overwhelmed, carrying everyone else's load. You feel like you're living someone else's life. You start losing trust in yourself because every time you say yes when you mean no, you're betraying your own feelings. White right pointing back hand index. Here's a truth you need to face. You can't build self-respect if you don't dare to protect what matters to you. And that's when you need to master one of the simplest yet most powerful skills. Saying no, with kindness, clarity, and confidence. Part 2. When you always try to please others, you lose yourself. We often believe, if I'm kind, if I'm always willing to help, people will like and respect me more. But the truth is quite different. Pensive face. When you always say yes, people start expecting it. They begin to ask for more, demand more, without even checking if you're okay. They get used to your presence, but they stop truly valuing it. And worst of all, they no longer see you as someone with a voice of your own. You're no longer seen as a person of value, but rather as someone who's convenient, easy, and always available to help. Chart with downward trend. What do you lose? 1. You lose time to things that don't truly matter. You keep saying yes to invitations, side projects, and other people's problems. But when it comes to your own life, your health, your passions, your dreams, you've run out of time. 2. You lose respect, even from the people you're trying to please. It sounds ironic, but it's true. People actually respect you more when you know how to say no at the right time than when you're constantly trying to please everyone. Because when you set clear boundaries, you're saying, my time is valuable. My needs matter just as much as yours. I'm helping you because I choose to, not because I feel forced to. 3. You lose connection with yourself. When you live too long trying to please others, you slowly forget. What do I really want? Where are my boundaries? Who am I actually living for? You begin to feel empty, even when surrounded by people. You become irritable, exhausted, overwhelmed. Not because others are wrong, but because you never protected yourself early on. White right pointing backhand index, and here's the saddest part. If you don't learn to say no to the small things, you'll eventually have to say no to far more important ones. A full night's sleep. A weekend to recharge. A real opportunity to grow for yourself. People don't need you to be a superhero. They just need you to be yourself, clear, honest, and with boundaries. And it's through setting those boundaries that you'll discover something powerful. Self-respect isn't something you're born with, it's something you build every time you have the courage to say no at the right moment. Part 3. The psychological power of setting personal boundaries. Do you know what clearly separates someone who constantly gets pushed around from someone who earns respect from the very first interaction? It's not their status. It's not their appearance. It's not their qualifications. White right pointing backhand index, it's clear personal boundaries. What are boundaries? Personal boundaries aren't about being selfish or cold. They're your way of telling the world, this is what I'm willing to give. This is what I can't take on. And this is how I choose to be treated with respect. White have a check mark. When you set clear boundaries, you'll notice some powerful shifts. 1. You feel relieved, no longer stuck in a performance. You no longer have to pretend to be kind all the time. You don't have to live as the perfect person who never says no. You return to your true self. Honest. Clear. Self-respecting. 2. You bring clarity to your relationships. When you have the courage to say no, people will understand what is acceptable and what is not. Learn to adjust how they treat you. And most importantly, respect you more. Electric light bulb. Interestingly, unclear boundaries lead to misunderstandings. Clear boundaries lead to respect. 3. You start rebuilding your inner confidence. Every time you say no to something that doesn't align with you, you're sending a message to yourself. I am worthy of being prioritized. I don't need permission to be who I am. And slowly, you stop trying to make others love you, because you're learning to love yourself. Bullseye real-life example. A young employee constantly gets asked by coworkers to take on tasks outside her role. After repeated stress, she learns to say, I won't be taking on this extra task, my current workload is already full. At first, some people are annoyed. But over time, they respect her more, communicate more clearly. And she feels lighter each day. Boundaries aren't walls that shut people out. They're doors that show others how to enter the right way. Part 4. Real-life application, how to say no and still be respected. We already know why we should say no. And we understand the cost of always saying yes. But now comes the most important part. White right pointing backhand index. How do you say no gracefully while preserving relationships, professionalism, and self-respect? Saying no isn't about slamming the door shut. It's about opening another one with more honesty and clarity. Here are 4 practical strategies to help you say no and still be respected, even appreciated, for it. White have a check mark. 1. Be direct and clear, no vague responses. A common mistake is saying no with uncertain phrases like, let me think about it. I'm not sure. Maybe I can. This gives others the impression that you might say yes, and they end up disappointed when you don't follow through. White right pointing backhand index. The solution, say no clearly and respectfully. Examples. Thank you for thinking of me, but I won't be able to join this time. Right now I need to focus on my own projects, so I'm not taking on any additional commitments. White have a check mark. 2. Keep your tone kind, but don't apologize for prioritizing yourself. A common misstep. I'm sorry, I know this sounds selfish. I feel really guilty, but... White right pointing backhand index. You don't need to apologize for putting yourself first. You can decline sincerely, without diminishing your worth. White heavy check mark 3. Offer an alternative, when appropriate. If you still want to maintain the relationship or support indirectly, suggest another option. Examples. I can't help out this week, but I'd be happy to send you a useful resource. I'm not available to cover that shift, but I can recommend someone who might be. This shows care and consideration, rather than abrupt rejection. White heavy check mark 4. Practice with small, low-pressure situations. You don't need to start by saying no to your boss or a big client. Begin with simpler moments. Declining an unnecessary coffee meetup. Saying no to joining a group chat you're not interested in. Turning down unpaid overtime not in your contract. Every time you say no is a chance to practice the skill and affirm your self-worth. Saying no at the right time doesn't break relationships. It redefines them in a clearer and healthier way. Part 5. Transformation, from fear of saying no to learning to love yourself. Maybe you've been here before. Saying yes because you were afraid of being judged. Nodding to a request, even though every part of you wanted to scream no. Forcing a smile through a meeting you never wanted to attend. Staying silent in moments when you should have spoken up. You've sacrificed your own comfort just to keep the peace. You believed that was good, kind, lovable. But then, what happened? You felt exhausted. You started getting irritated with the very people you were trying to help. You began to feel like you weren't yourself anymore. Sparkles, this is the moment of transformation. You realize? White right pointing backhand index saying no isn't selfish, it's a responsible form of self-love. Electric light bulb, when you learn to say no, you are saving your energy for what truly matters to you. Respecting your own time and well-being. Sending a message to the world. I have value. I'm not here to please everyone, I'm here to live truthfully. A powerful mindset shift. Not everyone will understand, and that's okay. The right people will respect your boundaries. The wrong ones will walk away, and that's a gift. Red heart # signs you're starting to love yourself more. You can say no without guilt. You sleep better because you stopped carrying everyone else's burdens. You finally have time for the things you truly enjoy. And most importantly, you feel at peace with your choices. You weren't born to serve everyone. You were born to live a life that's limited, but deeply meaningful. Final part, respecting others is good, but respecting yourself is true power. You don't need to force yourself to be the nice person all the time. You don't need to sacrifice your true feelings just to be seen as easygoing. White right pointing backhand index, you have the right to say no. Not to push others away, but to protect the most important part of yourself. When you set boundaries, you're teaching others how to love you the right way. When you say no, you're choosing to live responsibly with yourself. Remember, saying no doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you clearer. You don't need to be loved by everyone, you need to be respected by yourself. And sometimes, no is the kindest word you can say, to others, and to yourself. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with you, you are saying no to the life you truly want. White right pointing backhand index, if you've ever felt pressured because you couldn't say no, drop a comment below. I choose to love myself with clarity. And don't forget, white heavy check mark, hit like if this video spoke to you. Large red circle, subscribe for more deep and honest videos on self-growth. Bell and turn on notifications so you don't miss the journey, right here on Everyday Momentum.